This is the Mojo, the Meaning of Life and Business podcast, where life and business intersect. Hosted by Jennifer Glass, CEO of Business Growth Strategies International and BGSI Coaching. We are dedicated to your success. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mojo, the Meaning of Life and Business. Maybe you've been in your business for a while. Maybe you've been in your business for a week. Or maybe you're literally just thinking about starting your business. Very often, one of the things that we start thinking about, though, as we are operating our business is how are we seeing the growth? What are we seeing as opportunities? What are we seeing as the threats? Anyone that's familiar with marketing knows what we call SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. If we look at where we are in our businesses, what are the opportunities that are really there? What do we learn from those around us? And how can we start bringing that into what it is that we are actually doing in our business to make it stand out in a way that's going to work for us? And I have a really great guest on the show today who's going to help us boil down some of the lessons that he has learned from his own business in a really tight market. And hopefully, as we go through that, you too will find some of those same ideas that you can incorporate into your business as well. Before I bring him on, though, let me tell you a little bit about him. Brook Shepard is the founder and CEO of Mason Interactive, a premier digital marketing agency known for delivering exceptional results through a blend of data, design, and strategy. With more than a decade of experience, Mr. Shepard has established himself as a trusted thought leader, guiding clients in diverse sectors from e-commerce to healthcare. His expertise lies in crafting bespoke marketing strategies that drive sustainable growth and a strong return on investment. Brock, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. So before we jump into it, let me ask you, how did you get to where you are today? Obviously, you didn't start as the CEO and founder of a major agency straight out of school. So how did you get here?
Thank you. I went to school in New York City in the late 90s, and I did what I was supposed to do, which was work on Wall Street. And I was not good at it, and I didn't enjoy it. And that's probably why I wasn't good at it. So the honest truth is I kicked around for a little bit. I had a number of jobs that were fun and were about supporting my lifestyle of painting, is the honest truth. I drove a cab for a little bit. I worked as an editor for a little bit at different places. And eventually I fell into an agency in Long Island that I'd commute into from Brooklyn every day. And I had so much fun working in that agency because it was not a great big company. But the idea that I could have a job that I liked that was a little bit creative, it was an agency, where I could make a little bit of money and not being a starving artist, to me was a great fit. So having realized that that's a thing that worked for me, that I got to be creative and earn a living, I began to try to grow my agency credentials. And I started my own small agency. I had to come to the realization that I wasn't good enough to grow it with the tools I had to quit that and give my clients to a friendly competitor and then get a job at another agency. And then that agency, I left and started Mason. There's a little bit more in between there, but I started Mason 17 or 18 years ago because it's what I knew how to do and it's what I liked doing. I did it. I'd been working at agencies for 5 or 6 years before at that point. So it was a natural sort of progression and flow to do it. And I didn't call myself the CEO for the first couple of years. I called myself the general manager, which was a more honest term. I only switched my title to CEO when I began to get a lot of LinkedIn recruiters calling me to be the general manager of like fish fry restaurants in the Jersey Turnpike, which no hot sauce. If that's your gig, that's great. But that wasn't what I was doing, so I had to sort of change the title. So no, I didn't start as CEO. I started as general manager, and I changed it for the optics. Does that answer the question?
It definitely does. And, one thing I just want to talk about the title there, because when I started my business, I put down president. And hearing from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, which is a big program all over the place. But one of the things I learned from someone there was that people always want to talk to the person in charge. If you're
Hmm.
the president of the business, it does not necessarily mean that you are the person in charge. There still can be somebody on top of you. And so if there is a question, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the one in charge. And especially as a woman in business, sometimes it's a little bit different. Well, there must be a man who's on top of you, and let me talk with him. And so, one of the things that I got from this 10,000 small businesses leader was the idea that you need to become CEO in the business. Because if you're CEO in the business, then you are the chief executive. There is nobody on top of you. And so that general member or general manager operating whatever it is you want to put down there does not necessarily mean that you are the one that is ultimately leading to where you are. But one of the things I started dialing back, just so I don't scare folks, is I put down founder
Yeah.
because founder, you're still the one who knows everything. You've been there the whole time. And you can still be doing a whole bunch of other things if you needed to as you're involved in the process. And so for me, being a TV producer and having so many other things that I do have my hands in kind of allowed me to get there. But let's get back though to your story. So first of all, I love the whole you did the Wall Street thing and didn't like it, so you moved on and the painting and all of that. I love that. Just before we continue, anything that you actually put out there, or is the painting just your hobby, if you will?
No, I don't paint at all anymore. And I wish I did. I was showing in galleries. I was having in Soho at the time. Chelsea wasn't as big then. Sorry for the if you're not in New York and I'm being art snobby about locations. The thing was I stopped enjoying doing it, and so I don't. So it wasn't like a hobby. I went to school for it. I did it in high school. I was doing it professionally. I stopped enjoying it, and the issue was I was painting in such a way that was, and I still do this now for work, by the way, in a different way. The way I would paint is I needed 16 hours of uninterrupted time with oil paints and painting wet into wet, and it was this huge amount of concentration. And Jennifer, I just stopped enjoying it, and I would be toiling away in these paintings and living a life that was very itinerant, so I could afford to have a studio. That meant I was living in a strange neighborhood that wasn't maybe the best place to bring people, friends and family over. And I would just work all night long and produce these things, and it just didn't work for me anymore. I often think that I started so young that by the time I was 25, I've been doing it for 15 years at that point. So it was like enough already. So I don't paint at all anymore. I wish I did. I wish I'd found a way to keep it going and maybe paint in a smaller scale, but I didn't do that, and that was a decision, and I can't go backwards.
Absolutely, but at least though where you are right now is in a better place, however it is that's meant to or not, depending how you look at it, and you can always continue painting just, differently. But Brock, let
Yes.
me ask you, because as you run a marketing agency, one of the things you do need to have still is that creative side,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know that marketing is all about coming up with a campaign. If you watched any of the TV shows about marketing, whether it's Mad Men, going back a number of years, or even Jimmy Fallon's agency on the brand, I think was the name of the show. You have those kinds of things, more contemporary, or The Apprentice back in the day is another one. All of these different places, when we think of marketing, we think of like all of these huge ideas and everything. But the truth is, for small businesses, marketing is still involved. It's just not a huge multi-million dollar campaign. But being creative, though, the painting probably helped you with that process, right?
I think it did. I also think my life experiences helped because I think studying painting and working on Wall Street and driving a cab and having all sorts of different job experiences probably made me more suited for it than anything else professionally. But yes, the creativity is part of it, especially now today, and this wasn't the case 5 years ago, and it may not be the case 5 years from now, but today, the number one thing that drives meta campaigns, which is a commodified skill at this point. The number one thing that drives meta campaigns is the creative behind it and explaining that creative to a client or a prospect in a way that makes them understand it. The industry has become very commoditized. I used that word a minute ago. And by that, I mean, I started as a Google account manager. That was my skill set. And I was lucky enough to grow some clients from spending $2,000 a month to $2 million a month when we're going back 20 years now. And I was good at my job to do that. I was lucky because I was in the right place at the right time. I worked very, very hard, and I was consumed with making my clients successful. But the difference between when I started doing that and when I started the agency 17 years ago, between a really good account manager on Google and a really bad account manager on Google was a big, big difference. And there's a lot more automation now that shrinks that gap. It's still a difference. There's still a skill set to it, but it's not quite the giant gulf that it was. And so it's a little easier to be adequate at this job. And that's what I mean by commoditized. And so what drives success for clients is the creative that they're putting in market and the ideas that they have in market. And every client wants to operationalize that differently. And some are working on big campaigns that are trying to change hearts and minds. And some are being more programmatic about it, by which I mean, let's try 30 ads today. We'll cut the 20 worst tomorrow. And the day after that, we'll do 30 more. And so all those things work together. But yeah, creative campaigns is what drives success for our clients right now. The clients we have that are growing from spending $10,000 a month profitably to $200,000 in the space of 6 months or 4 months. It's only because of the product market fit. There's budgets. There's a lot of, but really creative is what's really driving it. So yes.
Yeah, so obviously when we look then at the commoditization of any kind of industry, how do we start then saying, all right, let's get a little more strategic then? Because again, when you're competing against other places and you're literally competing on potentially a penny difference in terms of the overall cost on whatever it may be that you're doing, right? A penny per search that you might be doing as an example. How do you start really learning how to put that into a way that's going to work in your favor for the client's benefit, as opposed to competition who might be looking at it in a different way? I mean, you've been doing this now 17, 18 years, like you said. How do you start, from your years of experience saying, all right, this makes sense now based on the commodity that I know that I'm offering clients?
Well, I'll answer that question directly, but I'd like to back up a little bit. We could see at the company, we could see because it's not hard to see the rise of AI in these platforms. And again, it doesn't mean that there's not a great benefit to being more skilled about it, but we decided a few years ago to plant our flag around our creative team, actually, and say that we're going to differentiate ourselves as a small independent agency by our focus on creative. We're not going to try to we're going to add that on to our performance marketing roots. And so now, today, we are the only place I know of that is not owned by private equity who can offer someone search engine marketing, social media marketing, creative campaigns and advertising, programmatic advertising, email marketing, so CRM, affiliate marketing, I hope soon PR. So what we try to be is a place where we can be a one-stop shop for our clients. And not all clients use us for all of our services. Some do, some don't. But that's how we differentiate ourselves. When I think about a client trying to differentiate themselves, the first thing that comes to mind with most of my clients, and it's funny, we see this like with $20 million brands, and we see this with $20,000 brands that are just starting out. The number one thing to me is the focus on new customers over ROAS, right? It's hard to get bigger and stronger at the same time as you're getting leaner and reducing body fat. If you're a weightlifter, like it's very hard to bulk and lean out at the same time. I think it could be done under the right circumstances, but that doesn't usually happen. Usually what happens is people put on muscle and they get stronger and then they diet down to be skinnier again. And so if you can't necessarily go after, if it's very challenging to go after ROAS and growth at the same time, and you can, but it's challenging. The thing is to focus on growth, and growth means new customers. So let me say that a different way. We acquired an agency 2 years ago based in LA because I don't speak LA very well and these guys do. So we were lucky enough to find one another and we acquired them. And the CEO of that agency that we acquired went on vacation, which he deserved. And he left me as his autoresponder, which was interesting. And so I got a call from a client who I will not name, but the client was a $5 million business. I don't know how he had just bought the business. Okay. So I don't know how he made his money to buy the business. I don't know if he made it on Wall Street or through real estate or through inherited it, or I don't know. I didn't ask him. But this guy calls me up. He says, "Hey, you're the guy that I work with usually is out. He left you as an autoresponder. I really need help with my business. What's going on with it?" And I don't know the answer to everyone's problems, and I can't always find out all the answers to people's problems. This guy's problems I knew. This guy's problems were that he was focusing on return on ad spend, ROAS, what he called efficiency over growth. And so I was saying to him, and I say this to a lot of people, some version of okay, you're asking my team to focus on efficiency, which you have defined as return on ad spend, ROAS. And we're doing that. We're hitting your ROAS goals. So that's a green light in your indicator, in your dashboard. How's the rest of your business doing? And it wasn't doing so great. So, okay, if you're tasking us with efficiency, by which you mean ROAS, and we're doing that, but everything else in the business is declining, maybe ROAS isn't the right thing to look at. Maybe we should be looking at new customers. And the conversation then became, well, I just need the highest ROAS and new customers cost more. Then the conversation becomes, yes, they cost more because they're worth more. Let's think about this. We have a client that sells suits on Savile Row in London. They're $6,000 suits, right? The average customer buys, let's just say, 2 suits. That's $12,000 worth of revenue. The best way to get ROAS is to go to the existing customers that have bought 1 suit and say, hi, buy another suit from us. We've got a new colorway, we've got a new fit, we've got a new style, buy a new suit from us. That's the best way to have a good return on ad spend. If you do that, you have just technically, if people buy 2 suits at $6,000 each, you have only $6,000 more on average to extract from that prospect, right? Like all you can get by being efficient at a good ROAS is that 1 extra suit. Whereas if you go after a new customer, maybe the ROAS is less on that and lower on that new customer. But by definition, you have $12,000 of revenue to come in. And that was the problem with the guy that called me up from the other agency. That we acquired. This guy didn't quite want to get that. And it's a challenging thing, by the way, because not everyone, I don't explain it well all the time. It's hard for a business owner to understand. But the value of a new customer is almost always so much higher than the value of an old customer, which is why they cost more to get. And so I think when I talk to people, one of the biggest things I try to talk about is to forget about ROAS. It's like a vanity metric. It's like biceps in the gym. They look great. They don't really do anything. They just make you feel a little more vain about things, which is valuable, but it's not the same. It's not going to give you strength to, ski better or run faster or bench press more or save your kid or something. It's just a vanity metric. So let's focus instead on the metrics that actually matter, which is the overall health of your business, which is going to be almost always about growth, which is almost always going to be about new customers. So I think that's a long-winded answer, but that's sort of the way I think about like how one of my clients can differentiate themselves from everyone else is by realizing that a lot of people are playing a ROAS game and saying, okay, I want to be growing. How many new customers can I afford to get at still being profitable that will help me grow and figure out that number? I was a little long-winded there, but am I tracking that okay?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. So it definitely makes a lot of sense in looking at exactly what the return that we're getting. In my business coaching practice, one of the things that I talk about very often is the idea that, first of all, we need to look at way beyond just the price, right? You mentioned the ROAS, the return on ad spend, things along those lines, and the $6,000 for the suit or whatever it may be that we're talking about. We need to think about the value, right? Consumers buy value before they buy price. Think about whatever it is that you individually have been buying recently, right? If you go back to the holidays that just passed a couple of months ago, and you think about, all right, I bought this game set, I bought this, other piece of electronics for the Super Bowl, I bought this new TV, whatever it may be. You're thinking about the value as opposed to the price that you paid, right? If you start putting in more effort into focusing on the value instead of the price, that's another way that you compete against your competition. So you really need
Yeah,
to be thinking exactly how all of that is going to be going in that regard.
I think you're right. Another way I talk about that is the difference between benefits and features. I think people buy things, you said value. I think you're right. I think people buy things because how it makes them feel, and the benefit it gives them in their life, right? If you have a leak in your basement and you need it fixed now, the benefit is your house won't fall down if you get that leak fixed immediately. So you might be willing to pay a little more for the rush charge as opposed to waiting. And I think that that's another thing people tend to, especially if you're dealing with entrepreneurs that are starting a business and maybe they've done a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe, and they're just going to market. They might be so invested in their product that they're we have a candle client that's it's their own company. They started with their own money, and they're so invested in the number of ingredients and the quality of the ingredients. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. They are. But what's much more important is how that candle feels and makes your house feel when it's lit up, and how it makes the person who bought it feel about the scent that it brings and the memories that it conjures in their life. The features of the candle, I don't think, are quite as important as the benefit of the candle, which is, wow, my house smells great and my friends and family love it, which is a different way of saying what you're talking about with the value versus the price. It's
Right.
the same flip side of the coin.
Yeah. One of my coaches says, talking about features and benefits, he says, don't tell me about the spark plugs. Tell me I look cool and I can go fast.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
there are people who care about the features. We have to be able to talk about them. But yeah, people care about going fast and looking cool. I agree. That's a good analogy.
Yes. Thank you. I have to give James Malinchak credit for that one.
Good.
So as we look at where we go, right? I mean, we spoke about how we get through with these commoditized industries. And I certainly have been in that also in the credit card processing space. When it comes down to credit card processing, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I mean, I literally lost clients over a penny and a half.
Yeah.
And it's because when you start the relationship, if it's all based on price, it ends on price. If it starts on relationship and value, you keep the client because of relationship and value. Very big difference in terms of that too. So another major takeaway that we should all be paying attention to. But Brock, let me ask you, as we look at the marketing world, right? We're in 2026. There's so much that has happened over the last several years, right? With AI, with changes in the rules. I mean, you have Google doing away with cookies and Apple that's been changing things up, and you have the Apple intelligence that's going to be coming out at some point soon. There's so many things that are really changing in terms of the way that we do business, right? I mean, Google used to be the home for searching, right? It became a verb. Just Google it, right? Just like all the other companies that became verbs. And now we use AI to do the searching. And we've seen how the volume has shifted from traditional search into AI, even to the point where we see the difference in results coming in from Google, where they're giving us that AI snapshot before we even see the results when we are using Google for the searching. So if we're thinking about maintaining market share with what we're doing in terms of the marketing, when we're thinking about where we're going with all of this, I'm curious to know what your take is in terms of how do we look at all of this? How does it all mesh? And what do you think AI is ultimately going to be doing in terms of the process? Obviously, it's a
I,
loaded
I
question.
yeah, I have a knee-jerk reaction to that, which is doom and gloom. I don't think a lot about the future of AI because I don't get a vote in it, right? Like I can't control it, right? I can't control what Zuckerberg is going to do on Meta in June, and no one knows, right? I do think a lot about how to make my clients successful in it, and it's clear that you just brought up Google. Doesn't Google feel like driving your grandparents' car at this point, like a little quaint? Like when you were a kid, your mom wouldn't let you borrow her car. You borrow your grandparents' car for a date, and it was like had an AM radio only or like an 8-track. I'm a little older, but like Google feels so old and quaint at this point. It still has a value. It still is the bottom of the funnel. I still think that if you were looking for a database of human intentions and you wanted to know if you came from another planet and you wanted to know what humanity thought, I don't think you would look at Instagram. I'm not sure you would look at ChatGPT, although maybe you would. I think you definitely look at what people type into Google, because I do think it is a database of human intentions. But it's very clear that deprecating Google search, it's very clear that's a less powerful or less prevalent tool than it used to be. I think if there are fewer Google searches on a page, the search engine results page for our clients, generally, not the case for everyone, but for most of them, I don't think that means Google's less valuable. I just look at it as a declining natural resource, right? Like if there's less oil, the oil that's left over is more valuable. If there's fewer results on the Google's search engine results page, the results that are left are more valuable. So I think it behooves people to realize that and go after that shrinking landscape and that volume and go after it. And the other thing goes back to creative, because Google's pushing everyone into PMAX and demand gen campaigns over the last couple of years that leverage the power of YouTube. And the reason they do that is because no one was buying YouTube ads, because the ROI wasn't there. That's what's going on. I think that's what's going on. And so they forced us to do PMAX campaigns that rope in YouTube results into traditional Google results. And the way to deal with that is you have to be making video creative that speaks to the hearts and minds of your consumers so you can win them. You just can't have a marketing campaign today that doesn't have 5, 15, and 30-second videos describing your product. And not everyone gets that. So that's a big change in the face of AI. Is Google saying we're going to use AI to serve our ads wherever we want across the Alphabet network, Gmail, YouTube, Google, wherever else. And the way to do that is no longer to be, on top of being the best person who knows how to make the results show up the way you want and bid in the right keywords in Google. On top of that, you now need to layer on the creative intelligence to say, I know this is going to be a video, but it's going to be a pre-roll before something else. So I have to make these commercials to work for it. So you have to make more creative than ever before, which I think is the through line here of this conversation. If you're hoping to get away with advertising without a lot of video ads, you're not going to be successful right now.
Thank you. So if we look at long-term stability then in our businesses, so we know we have to be doing more video ads, right? More video creative. We know that we have to be focused in more on what Google and AI is doing in terms of the overall process. And we know also one of the things that Google did last year was that they started cutting off results when you do big searches, right? I think it was after, what was it, after 20 results that it's no longer there, something like that.
Okay.
But in terms of the process, when we think about what it really means to the everyday business, right? Again, you mentioned fewer resources. If you have 20 spots, let's just go with that as an example. And I want to point this out really critically here. If you have 20 spots and one company occupies 5 or 6 of those 20 spots, that is a huge chunk of the market that Google is giving up to this one business. Because 20 spots total, 6 of those taken up by one business, that is 20% of the market that Google is handing off to this one business.
Yeah, the person who
Think about
spends the
what
most.
that means.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's an online online ecosystem that favors bigger brands over littler brands. It doesn't mean the little guys can't compete. They can. They're not going to be able to outspend it. They're going to need to be a little more adroit and adept in how they go after it. And to me, again, it comes down to the number of new customers you have. Almost all of our clients went into Q4 of 25, and not all of them, but almost all of our clients went into Q4 of 25 with financial goals. I want to make this much money. I want to spend this much to get this much. Almost all of them, not all of them, but most of them had that. Almost none of them, Jennifer, had how many new customers I want. And I think that was I would keep preaching this to clients, and some of them agree with me and some of them don't. But to get ahead, you need to decide how many new customers you're going to want. You need to have, and then you need to find out where you're going to get them. So if you start the year with 100 customers and you want to end the year at 110 customers, and every year you lose 10 customers, if you're a consulting business with 100 customers, and every year you turn out 10% of your clients, if you do nothing at the end of the year, you'll have 90 clients and not 100. If you want to grow to 110, that means you need not just the 10 to grow, but the 10 to replace the 10% you lost. You need 20 new clients. Where are you going to get those 20 new clients? And there's only a few places you're going to get them. It's going to be trade shows. It's going to be referrals. It's going to be partners and friends. It's going to be Google. It's going to be Meta. It's going to be TV. It's going to be radio. It's going to be organic search. It's going to be TikTok. There's a finite number of places that you're going to get this hypothetical 20 clients from. And I think it's really incumbent for small business or big business to think about how many new customers you need in addition to your top line revenue goals. and then to figure out where you're going to get them from and how much you can afford to pay for them. And that is the conversation I have most often all day long.
One of my mentors says, Dan Kennedy, he says, he who can spend the most to win or to acquire a customer wins.
I think that's exactly right.
Yes, right there. So, Brock, let me ask you if we think about then really focusing in on how we look then at creating our budget.
Yeah.
You said it's based on the client gains, right? The net client gains.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to focus in on so that we really get even clearer as a takeaway? We obviously, let's just say we're spending $100,000 over whatever time period, whether it's a month, it's a
Sure.
year, whatever it may be. And we know that we need X number of clients from that. Is there anything else that we should be focused in on as a takeaway with that $100,000 in ad spend that
Well,
is
yeah.
going to help us?
I think the first thing is it's different for every business. It's different if you're a brand new business or if you're Coca-Cola. I think you need to spend 30% of your budget, whether it's a month or a week or in any given time frame. I think you need to be spending at least 30% of your budget on acquiring new customers. And that's top of the funnel things like TV ads and radio ads. And that's going to have a worse ROAS. Let me give you an example. In my building in Brooklyn, I'm in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and the building takes up a whole block. And this building is either art galleries, direct-to-consumer brands, or agencies. That's pretty much is in this building. We were referred to someone in the building who's a direct-to-consumer brand. The brand started in 2015, 16. The brand was going okay. It's a personal hygiene product. COVID hits. They're doing a lot of advertising on morning drive time radio here in New York City. They go to be a $40 million brand. Started in 2015. By 2021, they're a $40 million brand, right? When they got to that point, the board made them hire a growth marketing people, and they implemented some software to look at attribution solutions. And what happened was they decided that their digital attribution solution that they put in place decided that their morning drive time radio was not effective, which is obvious because you cannot buy something from the radio. You can't do it. You can't hear the commercial on Boomer and Geo in the morning here in New York and then go buy the product. So they turned off all their top of the funnel advertising, and the brand went from $40 million. The brand then contracted to $10 million within 6 months of them turning off Boomer and Geo. They asked, nothing else in their marketing mix changed. They came to my office and they asked me, what do you think we did wrong? And we did not win them as a client because I could not contain my incredulity. But the answer obviously is you turned off your top of the funnel advertising because you thought it had a bad ROI because you weren't measuring it correctly. And now your business is 10 million instead of 40 million. They weren't focused on new customers. So it has to be spending 30% of your budget on new customers, understanding that those things are going to have a different ROAS than remarketing to people, and not being addicted to the high of only having a high ROAS by going after only remarketing to past customers. Look at everything in a blended way. Challenge your agency or your internal team and say, look, we need to be at a 4 ROAS overall, and some people need to be at a 6. And some people we need to be at a 4 ROAS overall. These top of the funnel campaigns have a 1 ROAS. Don't just pause them. Maybe pause them, but don't just pause them. Think with intelligence and diligence about what those top of the funnel campaigns are doing and what they're driving for you, because their goal might not be ROAS. If the whole blended portfolio of your advertising is at your 4 target, maybe those things at a 1 ROAS, the top of the funnel, have a real benefit for you that someone might not be really grasping the full impact of in their business.
Thank you. So, Brock, let me ask you, people have been listening to our conversation for the last half hour or so, and they're interested in getting in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
I appreciate that. The very best way to get in touch with me is masoninteractive.com. It's MASON interactive, masoninteractive.com. You can check me out on LinkedIn and Google me, but masoninteractive.com is the way to find us.
Thank you. And we'll definitely include all that information in the description for the show. One other question that I do have for you that I'm curious to know your take, and I like asking some of my guests this question. The word success.
Ooh.
How do you define it? And based on that definition, do you consider yourself to be successful?
No, I am not successful. I will consider myself successful when I built a company that will outlast me. And when I go, and the company's healthy without me. Like there's a rule about if the CEO goes away for 2 weeks, will things collapse? My company will not collapse if I go away for 2 weeks. We're getting much, much better. I will consider myself successful when the company, business-wise successful. My kid and my wife are a different thing. But I will consider myself business-wise successful when my company can live without me and I can retire and it carries on. And I'm not there yet.
Sounds good. And thank you for that honest answer.
I tried.
Yes. So, Mason, Brooke, thank you so much for being my guest on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, make sure that you check out masoninteractive.com. It's going to be a really great way for you to be looking at what it is that you are trying to do in terms of your overall marketing needs in that regard so that you can find out whether or not it is the right fit. But the biggest thing, again, that you want to be paying attention to is how do you differentiate yourself in your market? What is it that you're doing? How do you change the consumer perception of you? Is it just on price or is it on value or the features versus benefits like Brock and I were talking about? Think about what that really means to you as a consumer of your own product. Are you looking at, well, gee, I would totally use this, or are you kidding me? I would never use this. If it's the latter, you really need to change what it is that you're doing, because if you don't see the value in it yourself, your consumers surely are not going to as well. Think about that before you even invest a dime, because if you won't use it yourself, any ad spend that you do put out there is going to have minimal results. Because if people cannot tell the difference of why you are going to be better, it is not going to work on the other side too. I want you to think about this for a second. For those of you that watch Shark Tank as an example, one of the things that Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, says is, I'm going to take it out back and shoot it for the cockroach it is. That's his line, not mine. Think about what that means, though, to the business, right? It is not something that people are really going to be looking at. A lot of businesses are definitely in that space, and we need to think differently about the way that we operate. When you speak with somebody like Brock, one of the things that he's going to do, just like he mentioned about that DTC, direct to consumer brand, is because they changed the marketing. They changed focus on what it is that they were doing and where they were going and why that had a huge result, knocking off 75% of their business simply by taking off top of funnel. We need to understand how the things that we do, the changes we make, are going to have a long-lasting impact on what we're doing. And like Brock said, in terms of being successful, is the company going to be there 10, 15, 20 years after he's no longer CEO of the business? And at that point, he'll consider himself to be successful. There's so much that we really need to be thinking about in that regard to what we do today and what we do tomorrow. On that note, again, thank you, Brock, for being my guest. And until next time, this has been another episode of Mojo, the meaning of life and business. And here is to your success. This has been another episode of Mojo, the meaning of life and business podcast. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving us a review, liking us, or reaching out to us. You can contact us at bgsicoaching.com and let us know what you think. Thanks so much again for listening.